But let's play this clip of Donald Trump. It's fascinating because he sees the Israeli government respond so positively to Biden and Blinken, who are basically just, blank checking things, both in terms of like accountability and in terms of weaponry and whatnot. And they're, and here's Donald Trump's response, which is hilarious. I mean, how many times Donald Trump said, like, Jews are bad because they don't realize how great I am for Israel, how much I love Bibi Netanyahu. And now look at him.
And then 2 nights ago, I read all of Biden's security people. Can you imagine? National defense people. And they said, gee, I hope Hezbollah doesn't attack from the north because that's the most vulnerable spot. I said, wait a minute. Hezbollah is very smart. They're all very smart. The press doesn't like when they say it. I said that President Xi of China, 1.4 billion people, he controls it with an iron fist. I said, he's a very smart man. They killed me the next day. I said he was smart. What am I going to say? But Hezbollah, they're very smart. And they have a national defense minister or somebody saying, I hope Hezbollah doesn't attack us from the north. So the following morning they attacked. They might not have been doing it, but if you listen to this jerk, you would attack from the north because he said that's our weak spot. About 15 seconds later, it was all over, and we did it. But I'll never forget that Bibi Netanyahu let us down. That was a very terrible thing. I will say that. And so when I see sometimes the intelligence, you talk about the intelligence or you talk about some of the things that went wrong over the last week, they've got to straighten it out because they're fighting potentially a very big force. They're fighting potentially Iran. And when they have people saying the wrong things, everything they say is being digested by these people because they're vicious and they're smart. And boy, are they vicious because nobody's ever seen the kind of sight that we've seen. Nobody's ever seen it. But they cannot play games. So we were disappointed by that, very disappointed, but we did the job ourselves and it was absolute precision, magnificent, beautiful job. And then Bibi tried to take credit for it. That wasn't good. That didn't make me feel too good, but that's all right. So they got to strengthen themselves up.
I don't know exactly what he's talking about from the clip that Bibi took credit for, but just the point about saying like the Israeli defense minister said, we're worried about Hezbollah attacking from the north. Like Hezbollah did not attack from the north. They shot off some rockets essentially to show that they could, but they weren't. They were basically landed in the desert. They didn't hit anything. The United States sent its ship down, sent I think multiple ships or at least one carrier.
Yeah, just to show them off and be like, we've got these. And
to basically say, yes, Hezbollah and Iran don't get any ideas. But the latest reports are that Iran was surprised by this move from Hamas. Which seems quite possible that there had to be so much operational security that that it didn't get out. But it would suggest that Iran at least was not being supportive of it. And if they're putting that out, they don't want the credit. And the reason why they do that stuff is to get the credit. I mean,
that's why the Wall Street Journal published it within, 48 hours are we talking about of the Hamas attack? And now the New York Times comes out yesterday or today basically saying U.S. intelligence believes that, as you say, Iran was surprised. But a lie gets halfway around the world before the truth, what's the phrase, puts on its shoes. Yeah.
Not that it's any type of like mitigation for the horrors, because you did have babies and children killed in this attack by Hamas. But the story of the babies being beheaded, we should say, has essentially been debunked. The Israeli
or unconfirmed, at least.
Well, the military, the Israeli military came out and said we can't confirm that story.
The Jerusalem Post has said they're confirming it, but again,
I don't know how
Those confirmations are like a
military.
military guy told us, right?
they said they saw photos of the Jerusalem post.
Fair enough. Yeah. I said like.
But they're more national. I mean, I can't assess.
Why
can't
be
assess.
definitive about it? Is my
We
point.
don't know is basically at the very least, but now that's the most circular. To your point though, Sam, it's still unconfirmed, and I don't want to make but other outlets have said that it's been debunked. Jerusalem Post is saying another thing. Either way, that is like spread everywhere at this point.
Yeah, I mean I don't know that it makes it. I don't know what material difference it makes in terms of like to say that these attacks were 11 on the barbarism scale as opposed to the 10 on the barbarism scale. But I think there is an attempt, and I think the reason why this is going around, and certainly I think I did, and I think there have been confirmed reports that Israeli soldiers were decapitated. And although, again, who knows? But what's clear is Netanyahu is trying to equate Hamas with ISIS.
Yep.
And
all Muslims are barbaric.
It is it's an inaccurate equation, because ISIS certainly was like, if you were in an ISIS camp, you were either a prisoner or a forced recruiter, or you subscribed to the ISIS ideology. There are literally millions of people in Gaza who have no such relationship with Hamas. And yet, they are trying to say that everyone living in Gaza is like living in an ISIS camp, so that they are all potential targets. That is what is going on here with the conflation of ISIS and Hamas.
Yeah. I think
it's non-analogous. The relationship between Hamas and the people living in Gaza is not analogous to ISIS, to people living in an ISIS camp. It's just not.
Yeah. And it's tough because, like, I don't think you want to be in a position where you're knee-jerk denying things that are looking like they're being reported. But at this other time, like people pointed out, October 10th, 1990 was the Nair testimony before the United States Congressional Human Rights Caucus ahead of the support to George W. Bush in their rationale to support Kuwait in the Iraq War. So, like,
George H.W. Bush.
H.W. Bush, right.
This was the Kuwait invasion,
Yeah.
and the ambassador's daughter, I think it
right.
was,
Yep.
testified of seeing babies ripped out of incubators by Iraqi soldiers. And these are things that sort of are developed, that are told to increase public support and to essentially increase the appetite for what the public is willing to digest in terms of the actions by, in that instance, the U.S. government. It's also part of, Kuwait trying to encourage the U.S. government to come in. Or in this instance, how much horror Netanyahu will be licensed to perpetrate on innocent civilians in Gaza. That's basically what's going on. And so, even if there are tactics that Hamas used, that ISIS used, it does not provide license. The dynamic is not the same in terms of people living in Gaza. It's just not. And it will be a war crime. I think we probably already have ticked off a couple of war crimes just by cutting off electricity and water and food and aid to civilians. I mean, it's collective punishment. But now we're just going to see bombing, and there's no way to say it's not indiscriminate. Just because you have intel that says there may be a Hamas person here and maybe a Hamas person there, if you've got to bomb through a a couple of families to get to that person. I'm sorry. And I feel the same way when the U.S. would drone weddings in Afghanistan or in Somalia. I mean, it's reprehensible. But this is literally shooting fish in a barrel. Except for in this instance, the fish, half of them are children, and the beyond overwhelming majority of them are just innocent people who have been living in misery. It really is just horrible.